Every year, you celebrate a day where light and dark are supposedly, flawlessly equal.
Right.
Like you've been taught it since grade school. You pictured this perfectly straight line drawn right down the middle of the globe.
Yeah, exactly 12 hours of day, 12 hours at night.
But astronomical data proves that you have essentially been living a lie.
A very persistent lie.
Right. And the real story behind this day involves, well, optical illusions, a 16th century religious crisis.
Which is wild.
It is. And the actual reason your Wi-Fi randomly drops out in late March.
The misconception is so deeply ingrained that it is literally baked into the word we use to describe it.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking a massive stack of sources, everything from celestial coordinate definitions to historical papal decrees and even satellite telemetry.
A lot of data.
A ton of data. And we're looking at a calendar event you've lived through every single year of your life, but probably completely misunderstand, which is the equinox. Our mission today is to uncover the mind-bending reality behind it. We're going to show you how a simple, first day of spring is actually a profound physical alignment of our entire solar system.
And it really is profound when you look at the mechanics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the sources we're looking at today are just packed with facts that completely shatter the conventional wisdom of what an equinox actually is.
We really have to start with the name itself, I think, because it promises something the universe simply does not deliver.
Right.
If we look at the etymology, equinox is derived directly from Latin. You have equa, which means equal, and nox, which means night.
Equal night.
Equal night. The name implies this universal, perfect 50-50 split of daylight and darkness.
Like 12 hours of sun, 12 hours of pitch black, no matter where you are on the planet.
That is the promise. But the astronomical data reveals a bombshell, honestly. On the day of the equinox, day and night are absolutely not equal.
Not at all.
No. If you are standing directly on the equator on the equinox, your daylight is actually about 14 minutes longer than your nighttime.
Wait, 14 minutes?
Yep, 14 minutes of extra daylight. And that discrepancy gets even larger the further north or south you move toward the poles.
Wait, if the sun is hovering dead center over the equator, shouldn't it be an exact 12-hour split? I mean, I always pictured the equinox like a laser pointer hitting a globe.
Okay, yeah.
Like if you shine that laser perfectly at the middle of the sphere, the light naturally stops exactly at the halfway mark, right? Leaving the other half in complete shadow.
The laser pointer visualization makes intuitive sense, but it highlights the first major flaw in our thinking.
Okay.
Because the sun is not a single, infinitely small point of light.
Right.
From our perspective on Earth, the sun is a giant disk in the sky. And sunrise isn't defined by when the exact center of that disk hits the horizon.
Oh, is it when it first touches?
Yes. It is defined by when the very top edge, what astronomers call the upper limb, first becomes visible.
Oh, I see. So because the sun has like a physical width, that upper edge peaks over the horizon before the center does.
Exactly.
And it lingers after the center has already set. So it's less like a laser pointer and more like, I don't know, a wide flashlight beam spreading out over the curve of the Earth.
That's a great way to put it. That sheer physical size is giving us bonus daylight.
Bonus daylight. Wow.
Put those two factors together, and the math of an equal night completely falls apart. But the physical size of the sun is only half the culprit here.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, the other half is the air you are breathing right now. Earth's atmosphere physically bends, or refracts sunlight.
Refracts it. Okay.
Because of this refraction, the atmosphere acts like a giant invisible lens. It essentially lofts the sun's image higher in the sky than it actually is in reality.
Wait, so we are seeing the sun before it has actually risen above the physical horizon?
Yes. To give you the exact numbers from the astronomical almanacs, standard atmospheric refraction bends light by about 34 arc minutes. Combine that with the radius of the sun's disk, which is about 16 arc minutes.
Hold on, arc minutes?
Oh, right.
For those of us without astronomy degrees, how big of a slice of the sky are we actually talking about here?
Fair question. Imagine the sky above you as a giant 360-degree dome.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
One single degree of that dome is roughly the width of your pinky finger held out at arm's length.
Oh, wow, that's tiny.
It is, and an arc minute is just 1/60th of that tiny pinky width.
1/60th of a pinky. Okay.
It sounds minuscule, but in orbital mechanics, it changes everything. Because of that atmospheric bending and the sun's radius, you get a total shift of 50 arc minutes.
Right.
This means that when you are looking at the top edge of the sun sitting right on the horizon line, the actual physical center of the sun is 50 arc minutes below the geometric horizon.
That is wild. So the next time I'm at the beach watching this, like, beautiful sunset, the sun I'm looking at is technically already gone.
It's technically gone, yeah.
Yeah. It's just a mirage projected over the horizon by the atmosphere. That just completely breaks my brain.
It is a literal optical illusion. Our atmosphere bends the light around the curvature of the Earth to give us extra daylight.
Huh.
And because of this illusion, the real day of perfectly equal light and dark doesn't happen on the equinox at all.
Well, then when does it happen?
Depending on your latitude, it happens a few days before the spring equinox and a few days after the fall equinox.
Okay.
Astronomers actually even have a separate word for this day of true equality. They call it the equilux.
Equilux. Equal light.
Exactly. Equal light.
Okay, so if the equinox isn't actually about equal light, what is physically happening to our planet on this specific day? Like, what is the actual definition then?
The true official definition of an equinox is a singular moment in time. It is the exact instant when the plane of Earth's equator passes flawlessly through the geometric center of the sun's disk.
Just that one exact second?
It's that second. At this specific moment, Earth's rotational axis is tilting neither toward nor away from the sun. It is perfectly perpendicular to the incoming solar rays.
Which means the solar terminator, the shadow line dividing day and night on the globe, runs straight from the North Pole to the South Pole.
It cuts the planet vertically, exactly perpendicular to the equator.
Right. And looking at the sources, this creates some completely bizarre phenomena at the extreme ends of the Earth.
Oh, it really does.
Because of that atmospheric refraction lens we just talked about, around the time of the equinox, the sun doesn't just rise and set at the poles. It basically just rolls sideways along the horizon.
It's an incredible sight.
There was this really incredible piece of data in our stack from 2021. For a brief window of about 4 days around the equinox, both the North Pole and the South Pole experienced daylight simultaneously.
I mean, let the geometry of that sink in for a minute.
It's crazy.
The poles are the absolute opposite extremes of the Earth. They spend 6 months in total darkness and 6 months in constant light. And yet, for a few days, the atmosphere bends the solar rays just enough that an observer standing at the North Pole and an observer at the South Pole could both look out and see the sun at the exact same time.
Just because the air is bending the light?
Exactly.
But even with that incredible alignment, the celestial clockwork isn't, like, completely symmetrical, is it? We have this assumption that the seasons are all exactly the same length, but the Earth's orbit has a pretty big quirk.
A major quirk. Johannes Kepler figured out the laws of planetary motion centuries ago, proving that planets don't orbit in perfect circles.
They're ellipses.
Right, they orbit in ellipses. So the Earth's orbit around the sun is slightly oval-shaped. Sometimes Earth is closer to the sun, and sometimes is farther away.
And how does that actually affect the length of the seasons?
This is where Kepler's laws get really interesting. Think of it like a gravitational slingshot.
Okay.
When Earth is closer to the massive gravitational pull of the sun, it gets whipped around faster in its orbit.
Makes sense.
But when it's farther away, the gravitational pull is slightly weaker, so it moves slower.
So our speed through space is constantly changing.
Drastically changing. And because of this changing speed, the interval from the March equinox to the September equinox, when Earth happens to be farther away and moving slower, is about 186 days.
Okay.
But the interval from the September equinox back to the March equinox, when we are closer and moving faster, is only about 179 days.
Wait, 186 days for one half of the orbit and 179 days for the other half?
Yeah.
That's a 7-day difference?
It is.
Which means the North Pole gets a full extra week of polar daylight compared to the South Pole? That's so unfair.
The mechanics of the cosmos are incredibly precise, but they are absolutely full of these asymmetrical quirks.
Which brings up a really fascinating problem.
Oh, the calendars.
Yeah, the calendars. If the math of the solar system is this complex, with elliptical orbits and optical illusions and changing speeds, how did human beings ever keep track of it?
Mostly, we didn't.
Because reading through the historical records in our sources, it seems like we were absolutely terrible at it, and it caused a massive global crisis.
It caused a crisis that literally broke our calendars.
Wow.
To understand how astronomy collided head-on with human history, we kind of have to rewind all the way to 45 BC.
Okay, let's go.
Julius Caesar establishes the Julian calendar, and he officially locks in the date of the spring equinox as March 25th.
I mean, pick a date on the calendar, declare the start of spring, and move on. Makes sense for the time.
It makes sense until you do the math. The Julian calendar year was about 11.3 minutes longer than the actual physical tropical year.
The tropical year?
Yeah, the tropical year is just the exact time it takes for the Earth to complete one full cycle of seasons.
Honestly, 11.3 minutes does not sound like a big deal.
In a single year, it isn't. Think of it like a wristwatch that loses exactly 1 second every single day.
Okay.
For the first few weeks, you don't even notice. But after a few years, your watch is so far behind that you are showing up completely late for work.
Right. Over the centuries, that 11.3-minute annual error just compounded. It meant the human calendar was drifting out of sync with the actual solar system by about 1 full day every 128 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fast forward to the year 300 AD, and the equinox drifted from March 25th back to March 21st.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Keep going to the 1580s, and the physical equinox was actually happening on March 11th.
So the calendar hanging on your wall says it's late winter, but the actual planet is already well into spring.
Exactly.
But why did anyone in the 1580s actually care enough to fix it? I mean, life was pretty agrarian anyway.
The catalyst was Easter.
Ah.
In the Christian tradition, the date of Easter is intrinsically tied to the spring equinox. The Council of Nicaea in 325 AD had anchored Easter to the vernal equinox, assuming it would always fall around March 21st.
Okay, but it kept moving.
Right. By the late 1500s, because of that invisible calendar drift, Easter was marching ever closer to the summer months. The church was literally losing its grip on the seasons. It was like a slow-motion Y2K bug for the 16th century. The calendar was essentially lying to them.
That's exactly what it was.
So Pope Gregory III steps in, and he establishes the modern Gregorian calendar to stop the drift. And his fix wasn't just resetting the date, right? It was changing the actual math of leap years.
It was a brilliant mathematical correction, honestly. Under the old system, every 4 years was a leap year, no matter what.
Right, which was adding too much time.
Exactly. Pope Gregory realized that added too many days over the long run. So he instituted a new rule.
Yeah.
You still have a leap year every 4 years, unless the year ends in 00.
Wait, so century years?
Yes. Century years, years like 1700, 1800, and 1900 would no longer be leap years.
But wait, the year 2000 was a leap year. I remember that.
Right, because that is the final piece of his rule. A century year is skipped unless it is divisible by 400.
Oh.
So 1600 and 2000 kept their leap days.
That is surprisingly elegant.
It really is. By implementing this rule, the Gregorian calendar removes exactly 3 leap days every 400 years. Instead of 100 leap years, you only get 97. That tiny mathematical tweak keeps the human calendar year almost flawlessly aligned with the astronomical year, keeping the equinox hovering right around March 20th or 21st to this day.
It's amazing that it took a papal decree to fix a math error from ancient Rome.
Yeah.
But what really stood out in the sources is that while Europe was, spiraling over a drifting calendar, other cultures were nailing this celestial alignment without any modern technology at all.
Oh, the cultural understanding of the equinox is profound globally.
Yeah.
Look at the architecture of Angkor Wat in Cambodia.
I saw that in the notes. That's incredible.
It was designed so that during the equinox, the sun rises in a flawless line directly over the central highest tower.
Just a perfect alignment.
It's a staggering display of ancient astronomical precision.
And you've got the Persian New Year, Nowruz, which is celebrated by millions of people across Central Asia today. They didn't just arbitrarily pick a random day for their new year. They tied it directly to the exact astronomical moment of the Northern Hemisphere's spring equinox.
Which highlights a major nomenclature problem we actually still deal with today.
What do you mean?
Well, we are so used to calling them the vernal, meaning spring, or autumnal, meaning fall equinoxes.
Right.
But that language is entirely hemisphere biased.
Oh, of course. Because when it's the vernal equinox in New York, it's actually the autumnal equinox in Sydney, Australia.
Exactly.
Calling it the first day of spring is completely confusing for literally half the planet.
The scientific community has really tried to correct this. You'll see alternative terms in the literature like March equinox and September equinox, which is better.
But it still relies on our specific human calendar.
Exactly. The most scientifically precise, universally applicable terms are actually the northward equinox and the southward equinox.
And those refer to what the sun is actually doing in the sky, right?
Right. Yes. The northward equinox in March describes the exact moment the sun's apparent declination crosses the celestial equator moving north.
Okay, apparent declination. Let's translate that. If I'm standing outside, what does that actually mean?
Imagine tracing the sun's path across the sky on a giant invisible glass sphere surrounding the Earth.
Okay, a glass sphere.
Declination is just the astronomy term for latitude on that glass sphere.
Got it.
So a northward equinox simply means the sun's path is crossing the Earth's equator and moving into the northern half of that sphere.
That makes total sense.
And in September, the southward equinox marks it crossing back into the southern half. It describes the physical geometry of the solar system, regardless of where you are standing or what calendar you happen to use.
Northward and southward, it feels much more grounded in physics.
It is.
And if the sun is perfectly aligned with the equator during these exact moments, and it's blasting radiation straight at Earth, what happens to all the satellites we've parked right over that exact same equator?
They have a very bad time.
Because reading through the telecom data in our sources, I was totally sidelined by this concept of a sun outage. I mean, I always assumed bad weather knocked out satellite signals, not the literal position of the sun.
Weather plays a role, certainly, but the alignment of the Earth and the sun during an equinox has severe direct consequences for modern telecommunications.
How so?
A sun outage plagues geostationary satellites. These are the satellites that sit in a fixed orbit directly over the Earth's equator. They provide satellite TV, internet, and critical communication links.
So they are sitting exactly where the sun's focus is during the equinox.
Precisely in the crosshairs. Think about the geometry. The sun is passing directly over the Earth's equator. This means that for a few days around the equinox, from the perspective of a ground station dish looking up at its satellite, the sun's going to track directly behind that satellite.
And the sun isn't just a bright light bulb, it's a colossal nuclear reactor blasting out intense radiation across the entire electromagnetic spectrum.
That immense radio frequency energy completely overwhelms the reception circuits of the ground station down on Earth.
Because it's too loud.
Way too loud. The station's antenna is pointing up at the satellite, trying to lock on to a faint data signal, but the sun is roaring right behind it in the exact same line of sight. It's like trying to listen to someone whisper to you while a jet engine is taking off right behind their head.
That's a great analogy.
The solar noise drowns out the signal entirely, causing temporary disruptions, internet drops, and degraded communication links.
So if you're trying to stream a movie in late March or late September and your Wi-Fi randomly drops out for 10 minutes, you might literally be feeling the physical effects of orbital mechanics aligning.
You are experiencing an astronomical event interrupting your router. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And the satellites themselves suffer during this time, too. Usually because the Earth's axis is tilted, a geostationary satellite sitting over the equator will pass slightly north or south of the Earth's shadow.
Oh, so they're always in the light.
Exactly. They remain bathed in sunlight nearly all the time, which keeps their solar panels fully charged.
But during the equinox, the Earth's tilt is completely perpendicular to the sun.
Which means the Earth casts its shadow directly outward along the equatorial plane. Those geostationary satellites are plunged straight into the darkest part of the Earth's shadow for the absolute longest duration of the entire year.
So they lose their power source.
They lose their solar power completely and have to rely entirely on their onboard backup batteries. It is an incredibly stressful time for satellite power management.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If the equinox causes satellite blackouts and battery drain here on Earth, what does it do elsewhere in the solar system?
Oh, man.
Because any planet with a tilted axis is going to have its own equinoxes, right?
Every planet with an axial tilt experiences them. But they play out in drastically different ways depending on the planet's unique characteristics. The most dramatic example in our solar system is, without a doubt, Saturn.
Because of the rings.
Because of the rings. Saturn's axis is tilted, just like Earth's. But it also has this expansive ring system orbiting directly around its equator.
Right.
Normally, sunlight hits those rings from above or below, illuminating the ice and rock, making them brilliantly bright to our telescopes.
But during a Saturnian equinox, the sun is shining completely edge-on to the equator.
It strikes the ring system perfectly edge-on. And you have to understand the scale here. These rings are wider than multiple Earths, but they're incredibly thin. In some places, only a few dozen meters thick.
So when a light hits them from the side,
they practically vanish. They receive almost no direct sunlight.
That's so eerie.
In fact, during this brief window, the rings actually receive more light reflecting off the surface of Saturn itself, we call planet shine, than they do from the sun.
I can't even wrap my head around that. Like a structural feature the size of a planet made of millions of ice chunks just suddenly disappearing into darkness.
It's breathtaking.
And because Saturn takes nearly 30 Earth years to orbit the sun, this isn't an everyday occurrence, is it?
No, a Saturn equinox is a very rare event, happening only once every 14.7 Earth years. We actually had a spacecraft there to witness it, though.
The Cassini probe, right.
Yes, in 2009, Cassini captured the Saturn equinox up close. Because the sun was hitting the rings horizontally, any chunk of ice or moonlit that was slightly taller than the rest of the rings cast massive, elongated shadows.
Like shining a flashlight flat across a dusty floor, suddenly you see every single bump.
Exactly that. It allowed scientists to see three-dimensional structures and towering debris in the rings that are completely invisible during the rest of the Saturnian year.
That is just so cool. And Mars has these intense equinoxes too, doesn't it?
Mars does. Its most recent northern spring equinox was in December 2022, and its northern autumn equinox was in January 2024.
Okay.
But Mars doesn't have a thick atmosphere or stabilizing oceans like we do.
Right, it's a desert.
So its equinoxes drive massive, violent shifts in global atmospheric pressure as carbon dioxide rapidly freezes and thaws at its poles as the sunlight shifts.
It is wild to think about how we started this deep dive.
Yeah. I mean, we started by picturing a clean, orderly 50-50 split of light and dark, drawing a perfectly straight line down the middle of a piece of paper.
The grade school version.
Right. But the reality of the equinox is so much messier and honestly so much more dynamic than that.
It's a highly complex interplay of orbital speed, atmospheric physics, and planetary geometry.
From the optical illusion of extra daylight caused by the air we breathe, to a pope doing fraction math to stop the calendar from ruining Easter.
Yeah.
We've seen how ancient architects built stone temples to perfectly catch this alignment, and how modern telecom engineers have to, over-engineer batteries just to survive its shadow.
Which brings us back to the reality of what this day actually is.
So what does this all mean? It means the equinox isn't just an arbitrary date printed on your wall calendar to tell you when to buy spring clothes.
Definitely not. It is a profound physical event. It is a moment where the vast, grinding mechanics of the cosmos briefly intersect with our daily lives, impacting everything from the history of our civilization to the internet connection in our homes.
It connects us directly to the gears of the universe. And I really want to leave you with one final thought.
Ooh, all right.
We spent time today talking about how Earth's atmosphere bends light. We talked about how 34 arc minutes of refraction creates an optical illusion, making our days artificially longer and allowing the sun to linger on the horizon as a mirage.
Right.
But zoom out from Earth for a second. Look out into the galaxy at the thousands of exoplanets we are discovering.
The truly alien worlds.
The incredibly weird ones. Worlds with atmospheres that are unimaginably thick or made of toxic, swirling metallic clouds.
Oh, wow.
If our relatively thin, transparent atmosphere can bend light to create an equinox illusion, how completely distorted and bizarre might a day look during an equinox on an alien world?
I can't even imagine.
On a planet where the atmosphere bends light so severely that it loops entirely around the planet, the optical illusions would be beyond human comprehension.
That is going to keep me up at night. The idea that a sunrise on another planet's equinox might look like a continuous glowing halo encompassing the entire sky.
It's entirely possible.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the equinox. We hope the next time March or September rolls around, you won't just look at your calendar. You'll look at the horizon, you'll think about that bent light and the satellites powering down above you, and you'll realize that perfectly straight line drawn down the middle of the paper is actually beautifully, wonderfully flawed. Picture this. You're surrounded by the absolutely deafening roar of tens of thousands of people.
Oh, yeah. A completely packed house.
Exactly. The sun is just beating down on this massive circular sand arena, and suddenly there's this flash of a bright crimson cape.
Right.
The crowd collectively inhales as this 1,000-pound, incredibly muscular animal lowers its horns and just charges at full speed toward a lone human being.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, is standing perfectly still in the dirt.
It's an image that is practically burned into our collective cultural consciousness, you know?
Totally.
But underneath that iconic flash of red, there's a reality that is, well, it's far more complex, a lot older, and far more divisive than a lot of people realize.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are pulling apart the mechanics, the deeply entrenched history, and the intense modern backlash surrounding the world of bullfighting.
Using a really comprehensive Wikipedia article as our sole source for this one.
Right. Our mission here is to figure out what actually drives this spectacle, how it evolved from ancient mythology into a highly formalized deathmatch, and why it's currently facing a massive existential crisis.
Yeah, we're going to trace the ancient roots, break down the highly ritualized Spanish corrida, look at some surprising global variations.
Some of which don't even involve blood, which is fascinating.
Exactly. And then finally, we'll impartially analyze the cultural, political, and animal welfare controversies that are just dominating the conversation today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand the controversy happening right now, we have to look at where this human versus bull dynamic actually comes from.
Right, and we aren't just talking about a few hundred years of history in Spain. We are talking about prehistoric bull worship in Mesopotamia.
And the Mediterranean, right?
Yeah, the Mediterranean too.
Mhm.
I mean, the very first recorded instance of something resembling a bullfight might literally be in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Which is just wild to think about. You have Gilgamesh and Enkidu fighting the bull of heaven, and the way the source describes it, Gilgamesh essentially dancing in front of the bull to lure it, while Enkidu maneuvers to strike the fatal blow.
It sounds eerily similar to the choreography you see in a modern arena.
It really does.
It absolutely does. That primal theme of, human agility versus brute animal strength. It carries right over to the Romans.
Oh, right. The Venetians.
Exactly. The Romans were completely obsessed with the Venetians, those massive human versus animal spectacles in the Colosseum.
Right.
There's actually a historical theory that Emperor Claudius introduced early bullfighting to Hispania, which is modern-day Spain.
Because he temporarily banned gladiators, right?
Yeah, he banned gladiatorial combat for a bit, but the crowd still demanded blood and spectacle. Pitting humans against massive local bulls was basically the perfect substitute.
And as we move out of antiquity and into the Middle Ages, the whole dynamic shifts completely. It stops being just a bloody distraction for the Roman masses.
Yeah, it becomes a highly exclusive, noble sport.
Right. Like, across most of Europe, knights were busy jousting each other. But in Spain, noblemen started fighting bulls on horseback.
And we're talking about historical heavyweights here, from Charlemagne to El Cid. They were all participating in this.
Which is crazy to picture.
Well, it was the ultimate aristocratic flex, really. If you were a medieval noble, a highly trained warhorse was essentially your equivalent of a fighter jet.
Wow, a fighter jet.
Yeah. It was wildly expensive to own, train, and maintain. So riding that horse into an arena against a massive, angry animal wasn't just about showing off bravery.
It was a public display of immense wealth.
Exactly. You were showing the public that you could afford to risk your most valuable asset just for sport.
But then you hit the year 1726, and everything changes. A man named Francisco Romero from Ronda, Spain, basically rewrites the entire tradition.
He gets off the horse.
He gets off the horse, he steps into the ring on foot, using just the muleta, that small cape and a sword. It's essentially the democratization of extreme sports.
That decision to step off the horse is the exact moment the modern corrida began to take shape.
Because suddenly you didn't need a stable of expensive horses and a noble title to be a hero, right?
Right, a commoner could step into the ring with just a piece of cloth and their own reflexes. It completely changed the psychology of the event.
How so?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that democratization is why this practice embedded itself so deeply into the Spanish cultural identity.
Ah, because the human wasn't protected by the armor and speed of a horse anymore.
Exactly. They were completely exposed on the sand. The spectacle transformed from a display of wealth into a raw, visceral display of human vulnerability and fatalism.
And that vulnerability reached its absolute peak later on with figures like Juan Belmonte.
Oh, Belmonte, yeah.
Because for a long time, fighting on foot still meant, jumping out of the way when the bull charged.
Right. A lot of dodging.
But Belmonte, who many consider the greatest matador of all time, he revolutionized the style by simply standing his ground.
He let the bull pass within centimeters of his body.
Centimeters. It was incredibly dangerous. I mean, he was gored countless times. But that static, impossibly close stance became the gold standard for the sport.
Which naturally led to the creation of incredibly strict rules.
Right. It had to.
Yeah, when you have commoners Standing centimeters away from a charging apex predator, it can't just be a chaotic free-for-all. It became highly ritualized.
So let's look at what actually happens inside the ring during the most famous style, the traditional Spanish corrida de toros.
Okay.
Because the scale of this is staggering. A standard event features 3 matadors, which literally translates to killers, and they each fight 2 bulls.
And these aren't your average jerry cows we're talking about here.
Not at all.
These are Spanish fighting bulls. They are raised free-range in these massive pastures with minimal human contact.
Just left completely wild.
Pretty much. They are bred specifically for their physique and their natural aggression. By the time they enter the ring, they're usually 4 to 6 years old.
And massive, right?
Oh, huge, weighing a minimum of 460 kilograms.
That is over 1,000 pounds of pure hostile muscle.
Yeah.
And the encounter itself is broken down into 3 distinct stages, or tercios, which are signaled by the blowing of a bugle.
The first stage being the tercio de varas, or the lancing third.
Right, so the bull charges into the ring, the matador tests its ferocity with a large magenta and gold cape, and then the picador rides in.
And the picador is a lancer mounted on a heavily padded, blindfolded horse. Their job is to use a long lance to stab a very specific amount of muscle on the bull's neck.
Called the Murillo.
Exactly, the Murillo.
Which, by the way, used to be an absolute bloodbath. I read in the source that before 1930, those horses didn't wear any padding.
Yeah, that was a brutal part of the spectacle.
They were routinely gored to death in the ring. Sometimes you'd have more horses dying in an afternoon than bulls.
Which is hard to even stomach now. Today, the horses wear thick protective armor, so they survive the impact. But the physiological goal for the bull remains the same.
Right. The lancing of the Murillo is highly strategic, isn't it?
Very. Weakening that massive neck muscle physically forces the bull to lower its head and horns when it charges. But it also fundamentally changes the animal's psychology.
How does its psychology change?
Well, when the bull first enters the ring, it's frantic, right? Just wildly charging at everything that moves. The fatigue from the lance focuses the animal.
Oh, I see.
It stops scattering its energy and locks onto a single target, which is absolutely essential for the final act.
But before the final act, you have the second stage, the tercio de banderillas. 3 assistants run directly at the bull and plant 2 sharp, barbed sticks into its shoulders.
And the point here isn't to weaken the bull further.
It's actually the opposite, right?
Exactly. It's designed to anger and reinvigorate the animal, to snap it out of that sluggish state the lancer just put it in.
Because the entire event is building toward the tercio de muerte, the third of death. The matador re-enters the ring alone.
This is the iconic image everyone knows.
The small red cloth, the muleta, and the sword. The matador performs the faena, which is this linked series of passes, guiding the bull's horns incredibly close to their body.
It's designed to look like a tragic, intimate dance.
And it culminates in the estocada, the fatal sword thrust between the shoulder blades, intended to sever major blood vessels for a rapid death.
And if the crowd deems it a masterful performance, they wave white handkerchiefs. The matador might be awarded the bull's ear or 2 ears, or even the tail as a trophy.
There's also this incredibly rare occurrence called an indulto, right? Pardon?
Yeah, the indulto. It's when a bull displays such exceptional bravery that the crowd basically demands its life be spared.
Oh, wow.
The president of the arena agrees, the bull's wounds are treated, and it gets sent back to the ranch to live out its days as a seed bull. It's the ultimate acknowledgement of the animal as a respected adversary, rather than just a victim.
But speaking of the animal's perspective, there is a biological reality about these bulls from the source material that completely shatters one of our biggest cultural myths.
Oh, the color red.
Yes. Bulls are functionally colorblind to red.
Completely.
The color of that cape means absolutely nothing to them. It could be neon green or plaid, and the bull would react the exact same way. So if the red cape is a myth, why is it used, and why is this whole thing structured like a 3-act tragic play?
Well, it's the sudden snapping motion of the fabric that actually triggers the charge, not the hue. The muleta is historically red purely for practical and aesthetic reasons.
It hides the blood.
Exactly. It masks the bull's blood during that final, messy act. Over centuries, that practical choice just calcified into an unbroken tradition.
And that rigid tradition extends to the pacing, too.
Yeah, it is entirely narrative by design. You have the initial testing of a chaotic, powerful force of nature.
Act 1.
Right. Then Act 2, the strategic, systematic wearing down of its physical defenses. And finally, the quiet, highly dangerous, intimate dance that ends in death.
The architecture of the corrida is meant to be a physical, real-time manifestation of human intelligence and dominance overcoming wild, brute nature.
Beautifully put. But, that highly rigid, lethal Spanish structure didn't translate perfectly everywhere.
No, it really didn't. Here's where it gets really interesting. When the concept of a human facing down a bull crossed borders and oceans, it mutated.
Other cultures kept the adrenaline of the encounter, but completely stripped out the blood. The global variations are incredibly diverse.
They really show how malleable this core concept is, like the Portuguese style, for example.
Oh, yeah. The first phase is actually fought on horseback, echoing those old medieval traditions we talked about. But it's the second stage, called the pega, that is truly unique.
The pega is unbelievable to me. You have a group of 8 men called forcados.
And they have absolutely no weapons.
No weapons, no capes. The front man steps out and literally provokes a 1,000-pound bull into charging directly at him.
Just bare hands.
Yes. As the bull hits him, he performs a face grab. He catches the bull's head with his bare hands and uses his own body weight to absorb the impact.
While his 7 teammates instantly swarm the animal to subdue it through sheer leverage.
And crucially, in the Portuguese style, the bull is never killed in the ring.
Never. It's a pure test of physical courage and teamwork. Then you have the French variations, which turn the whole thing into more of an acrobatic sport.
Like the course Camarguais in the south of France.
Exactly. Young men try to sprint past a charging bull and snatch a small rosette tied between his horns using a little claw-shaped metal comb.
And the bulls are the absolute stars of the show there. Right?
Oh, totally. They have names, they have fan clubs, and they return to their pens completely unharmed.
Or the course Landaise, where participants don't even try to grab anything. They just perform literal gymnastic leaps directly over charging cows.
It's pure evasion.
And you see echoes of this evasion all over the world. In Spain, there are recortes, where guys in street clothes dodge the bull using flips and sidesteps.
In India, there's Jallikattu, a harvest festival where people try to grab onto a bull's hump and hold on long enough to claim prize money.
You even see it in American rodeo clowns. Their entire job is to playfully but dangerously draw the bull's attention away from fallen riders.
But perhaps the most fascinating adaptation happened in California.
The Velcro bulls.
Yes.
California actually outlawed traditional lethal bullfighting back in 1957, but they have this very historic, deep-rooted Portuguese community in the Central Valley, and they desperately wanted to keep their cultural festivals alive.
So they invented a workaround.
They literally created laser tag bullfighting.
It is an incredibly ingenious compromise.
Ah.
The matador still dresses in the traditional garb, still taunts the bull, and still performs the passes.
But instead of plunging sharp lances or swords into the animal,
They use lances tipped with heavy-duty Velcro, and they aim for large Velcro pads strapped securely to the bull's shoulders.
I just love this mental image. You have a 1,000-pound apex predator charging at a human, and instead of a fatal stab, the climax is just a loud, satisfying thwack of hook and loop fastener connecting.
It preserves all the pageantry, the footwork, and the cultural adrenaline rush, but it completely respects modern animal cruelty laws.
So what do these global variations prove?
What they demonstrate, from the unarmed face grabs in Portugal to the Velcro in California, is that the core universal appeal of the event isn't necessarily the bleeding and death of the animal.
Right.
For many cultures, the profound draw is simply the spectacle of human agility, bravery, and ingenuity pitted against overwhelming physical force.
Which brings us directly to the massive tension of the modern era, because the traditional Spanish corrida, the version that still demands the blood and the sword, is colliding head-on with rapidly changing societal values.
It really is.
This is the core conflict between art, economics, and animal welfare. And to be perfectly clear to you listening, we are just looking at the arguments presented in our source material here because the debate surrounding this is highly polarized.
Oh, absolutely. We're just reporting what the sources say, because it's a profound philosophical divide.
Tell me about the two sides.
Well, on one side, you have the traditionalists, the aficionados. The text cites Ernest Hemingway's perspective to really illustrate this view.
Right. Hemingway was a huge fan.
Huge. He famously argued that bullfighting shouldn't be judged as a competitive sport, but as a tragic art form. In his view, it is the only art where the artist is in genuine danger of death.
So to supporters, the bull is a respected, almost mythic adversary.
Exactly. And the entire ritual is an irreplaceable pillar of their national heritage.
But on the exact opposite side, you have animal welfare advocates. Groups like the RSPCA view the practice unequivocally as inhumane and outdated.
They argue that wrapping the event in pageantry and calling it art doesn't change the biological reality.
Which is that it's a tradition of prolonged public torture ending in a slow death.
Right. And the source actually details a very specific debate between two experts that perfectly highlights this tension.
Oh, the Fisk-Harrison and Casamitjana debate.
Yes. You have Alexander Fisk-Harrison, an author who actually trained as a bullfighter, and Jordi Casamitjana, a zoologist and prominent animal rights activist.
The contrast in their arguments from the Wikipedia article is fascinating to impartially weigh against each other. Fisk-Harrison points out an uncomfortable reality for critics, which is the environmental and lifespan offset.
How so?
Well, he argues that Spanish fighting bulls live 4 to 6 years, which is roughly 3 times longer than your average factory-farmed cow raised for beef.
That's a huge difference.
And they don't live in feedlots. They live wild, free-range lives in massive protected meadows that are funded entirely by the bullfighting industry. He even suggests that the massive spike of adrenaline and endorphins during the fight might actually reduce the animal's suffering compared to the sheer stress and panic of a commercial slaughterhouse.
But Casamitjana fiercely counters that premise. He argues that you cannot isolate the final moments of adrenaline and ignore the rest of the ordeal.
Right. The tercio de muerte isn't the whole story.
Exactly. He points to the immense stress of transporting the wild animal in a dark truck, the sheer confusion of being thrust into a screaming arena, the physical trauma of the lancing, and the fact that the death is prolonged for entertainment.
So he's saying a longer life doesn't make up for it.
Right. He argues that a longer life in a meadow does not mathematically cancel out an immensely high degree of suffering in the ring.
This raises an important question, doesn't it? It really forces you to weigh two completely different ethical frameworks. Is the intrinsic value of a longer, wilder life morally offset by a violent public death?
And does preserving a vast ecosystem of protected meadows justify the pain inflicted on the individual animal in the arena? There is no scientific formula to resolve that.
No, it's a purely moral societal judgment.
And right now, society seems to be making its judgment very clear, particularly through generational shifts.
The demographic numbers we found are staggering. According to a 2019 Spanish government report, only 5.9% of Spaniards actually attended a bullfight the previous year.
That is incredibly low.
Right. And a separate poll highlighted in the material showed that 84% of young Spaniards, ages 16 to 24, actually feel ashamed to live in a country where bullfighting is a cultural tradition.
Yet you cannot separate the tradition from its economics. Despite that massive drop in attendance and the generational shame, the industry still generates roughly 1.6 billion euros a year in Spain alone.
Wow. 1.6 billion.
It supports nearly 200,000 jobs. It is a massive generator of tax revenue. So governments are caught between a massive economic engine and a tradition that the younger voting base is increasingly rejecting.
Which naturally leads to massive legal whiplash all over the world. I mean, in Spain, the region Catalonia actually banned bullfighting outright in 2010.
But then fast forward to 2016, and the Spanish Constitutional Court overturned the ban.
Really? Why?
They ruled that a regional parliament didn't have the authority to ban something that the national government officially recognized as protected cultural heritage.
Wow. And we are seeing that same legal tug-of-war globally. In Colombia, after years of intense political debate and a tragic stadium collapse in 2022 that injured hundreds, the National Congress finally voted in 2024 to completely phase out and ban bullfighting across the entire country by the year 2027.
And Mexico City has been an absolute roller coaster. They banned it indefinitely in 2022. Then, a high court temporarily revoked the ban in 2024, which allowed events to resume but sparked massive street protests.
Right.
And now, as of 2025, lawmakers there voted overwhelmingly to prohibit the actual killing of the bulls and the use of swords within the city limits.
It's also worth noting that inside this deeply traditional, highly patriarchal world, there have been pioneers fighting completely different battles.
Oh, definitely.
The source highlights women who fought for their right to step into the ring, like Angela Hernandez. In 1974, she won a landmark Supreme Court case in Spain to overturn a 1908 ban, finally legally allowing female matadors to compete on equal footing.
It's just layer upon layer of complexity. We started this deep dive looking at a prehistoric ritual, something Gilgamesh was doing in ancient myth.
Right.
We watched it mutate into an elite medieval flex of wealth and then transform into the highly formalized, wildly dangerous Spanish corrida.
And today, it is caught in a massive existential crisis, wedged between demographic collapse, animal welfare laws, and a desperate cling to cultural identity.
Because understanding the world of bullfighting isn't just about learning the mechanics of a cape and a sword. It is a real-time masterclass in how societies grapple with change.
It really is.
It shows us exactly what happens when deeply entrenched historical heritage collides head-on with rapidly evolving modern ethics.
So what does this all mean? We want to leave you with the final thought to mull over, specifically regarding what is happening right now in places like California with the Velcro or the new laws in Mexico City.
Right. In an attempt to save the tradition, lawmakers and communities are trying to strip the death and the blood out of the event while keeping the physical choreography intact.
But consider this. The entire historical weight of the Spanish corrida is built on fatalism, the very real threat of death for both the animal and the human.
Yeah, if you completely remove the lethal danger to the animal, you inherently lower the ultimate stakes for the human.
Does the event simply become an acrobatic game, completely devoid of its original meaning?
Or is that fundamental, bloodless shift a necessary evolution? Maybe the only possible way to save a dying cultural tradition from complete extinction.
Next time you hear the roar of a crowd or see a flash of a red cape, you'll know exactly how deep that question really goes. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Think for a second about the most secure vault in the world. Like, what immediately pops into your head?
Oh, probably, stacks of gold bars.
Right, gold bars, or like intricate laser grids, maybe heavily armed guards, or, I don't know, priceless diamonds locked away in the dark somewhere.
Yeah, that classic movie vault aesthetic.
Exactly. But what if the most genuinely valuable thing on Earth isn't shiny at all? What if the ultimate treasure is actually, brown, a little wrinkly, and roughly the size of a pinhead?
It really is a profound shift in perspective when you think about it. Because we are so conditioned to think of wealth in terms of currency, right? Or rare earth metals, or jewels. But true security, like the literal foundation of human survival, it actually comes down to biological code. I mean, it comes down to seeds.
Yeah. And to protect that biological code, humanity went and built a literal fortress in the absolute freezing dark of the Arctic Circle, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. And, okay, let's unpack this, because the media absolutely loves to call this place the Doomsday Vault.
Oh, they love that term.
Right. It immediately conjures up these, vivid images of asteroid strikes or some zombie apocalypse. But the reality of why this facility exists is, well, it's actually much more grounded than that.
Precisely. Yeah. The Doomsday moniker, I mean, it makes for a fantastic cinematic headline.
Totally.
But it kind of obscures the actual vulnerability of our global food supply.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about threats to regional gene banks, we aren't usually talking about a meteor. We're talking about a localized power grid failure.
Like a blackout.
Right, exactly. We're talking about a broken refrigeration unit that just goes unnoticed over a long holiday weekend, or, quite frankly, a sudden cut in government funding that forces a national facility to shut its doors.
Which is way less Hollywood, but way more terrifying because it's so common.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These events happen with surprising regularity. So the Svalbard Vault is designed to be the ultimate safety net for the world's, I think it's roughly 1,750 traditional gene banks. It's for when human error or mechanical failure or just local tragedies strike.
So it's less about surviving an apocalypse and more about, surviving a blown fuse or a bad budget.
Yeah.
But I feel like to really understand what is actually inside this vault and how it physically works, we really need to look at the sheer scale of the engineering. And for you listening, that really starts with the location itself.
Right. The geography is key.
Because the story traces back to 1984, when the Nordic Gene Bank, which is now called Nordgen, they began storing backup plant genetic material from just the Nordic region. But they didn't just put it in a standard industrial freezer. They took these frozen seeds and stored them in an abandoned coal mine right outside of Longyearbyen on the island of Spitsbergen.
Which was, at the time, a highly experimental yet completely pragmatic approach.
Really? A coal mine?
Yeah. They were essentially testing whether the natural ambient cold of the permafrost could serve as a reliable, zero-electricity baseline for long-term preservation.
Right. And using a coal mine is, like, deeply ironic. You're using the remnants of fossil fuel extraction, which, accelerates climate change, to protect our biosphere against it.
It is a bit on the nose, yeah.
But that initial experiment worked, right? It proved the concept. So fast forward to 2004, and a conservationist named Carrie Fowler leads this team to study whether they could scale this up for the entire globe.
And they decided they could.
Yeah, they decided to build this global facility right back on Spitsbergen in the Svalbard archipelago, deep in Norwegian territory. But of all the places on Earth, what makes this specific frozen rock the ideal candidate for a planetary backup drive?
What's fascinating here is how it brilliantly leverages the Earth's natural geography to basically do the heavy lifting for conservation. I mean, Spitsbergen is practically tailor-made for this kind of deep-time architecture.
How so?
First off, it completely lacks tectonic activity. You aren't going to get earthquakes shattering the foundation of the vault.
Okay, that's a big plus.
Definitely. Second, it has deep, permanent permafrost, which naturally aids the preservation. And third, the vault is located 130 meters. So that's about 430 feet above sea level.
Oh, meaning even if the most severe climate change scenarios play out and all the ice caps just melt completely, the vault stays dry.
Exactly.
It is physically situated above the maximum high water mark of a melted planet, which is honestly brilliant planning. It's like a cloud backup server for your computer, but instead of silicon and server racks, it's built into a sandstone mountain using permafrost.
That's a great analogy. But the location is really only the baseline. The thermal engineering inside the vault is what actually guarantees the preservation.
Right, because the mountain itself isn't cold enough on its own, is it?
No, it's not. Locally mined coal actually provides the power for refrigeration units that cool the seeds down to the international standard of minus 18 degrees Celsius, which is roughly 0 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, wait. I want to pause on that temperature for a second. Because if you just take, like, a normal seed from your garden and freeze it to minus 18 degrees, the water inside the seed cells will expand, right? It'll crystallize and rupture the cell wall.
It would absolutely destroy it, yeah.
The seed would just be dead. So how do these seeds survive that kind of deep freeze?
That is the crucial biological hurdle. And you're right, simply freezing a raw, fresh seed destroys it. So the temperature is only effective because of the really rigorous preparation the seeds undergo before they ever reach the vault.
So they aren't just chucking them in a bag and mailing them.
Not at all. They are subjected to a painstaking dehydration process. They reduce the internal moisture content of the seeds down to about 5 or 6%.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly dry.
It has to be. Once they're dehydrated, they're sealed in these custom 3-ply foil packages. By removing the water, you basically remove the mechanism that causes the cellular damage during freezing.
Ah, no water means no ice crystals.
Exactly. And then the cold just halts the seed's metabolic processes entirely, basically placing it into a state of suspended animation.
That is so cool. And once they are in that suspended animation, the physical fail-safes of the mountain kind of take over, right?
They do.
Because the vault is built 130 meters deep into this solid sandstone mountain. So if the absolute worst happens, say total catastrophic power failure, the cooling units just die and literally nobody comes to fix them, the ambient environment acts as this massive thermal battery.
Yes, the thermal inertia of that much solid rock is just immense. Because it's buried so deep in the permafrost, a feasibility study showed it would take at least several weeks for the facility to even warm up to the surrounding sandstone bedrock's natural temperature.
And what is that natural temperature?
It sits at minus 3 degrees Celsius.
Okay, wait. It would take several weeks just to hit minus 3.
Yes.
And I read the estimates say it would take 2 full centuries, 200 years, for the vault to gradually warm up to 0 degrees Celsius, the actual freezing point.
Which is staggering to think about.
Right. That gives humanity a 200-year buffer to fix the power grid before the seeds even begin to thaw. That's the ultimate failsafe.
It really is an unprecedented level of biological security. Because under these specific dehydrated and sub-zero conditions, the seeds of most major food crops can be preserved for hundreds of years.
Wow.
And certain vital grains could potentially remain viable for thousands of years.
Okay, but building a mountain fortress is really only half the battle, because you also have to convince the entire world to actually put their most precious agricultural heritage inside of it.
Yes, and that is a massive challenge.
Right. Getting the rival nations of the world to agree on anything, let alone trusting each other with the literal foundation of their food supply, that requires a legal architecture that is just as airtight as the physical vault.
Honestly, the diplomacy is arguably more complex than the engineering.
I believe it.
The management of the vault relies on a highly specific legal framework. It's called a tripartite agreement. And it involves three key players: the Norwegian government, an organization called the Crop Trust, and Nordgen, which is the Nordic Genetic Resource Center.
Okay, so breaking that down, Norway paid the construction cost, right? Which was about 8.8 million US dollars back in 2008.
Correct.
And they own the actual physical facility. Then the Crop Trust provides the funding for the ongoing operations, and they heavily subsidize developing nations to help them prepare and ship their seeds.
Yes, they ensure money isn't a barrier.
And then Nordgen actually operates the vault on a day-to-day basis, maintaining the massive public database of what is actually stored inside. And the storage itself is totally free for the depositors.
Completely free.
But I have to admit, I'm a bit hung up on the economics here.
Okay, how so?
Well, if Norway built it, the Crop Trust covers shipping, and the storage is completely free. What is stopping a chronically underfunded national government from just firing its own gene bank staff, shutting down its local facilities, and using Svalbard as its primary free storage facility?
That is a very logical concern. But it is entirely prevented by the strict mechanics of what they call the black box system.
The black boxes.
Right. Svalbard is legally and operationally restricted to being a secondary backup. It fundamentally cannot function as a primary gene bank. The seed vault operates exactly like a safe deposit box at your local bank.
Oh, yeah, I'm following.
The bank, in this case, Norway, they own the building.
Yep.
But the depositor retains absolute ownership over the contents of their specific box.
So if a researcher in, say, Canada wants to study a specific drought-resistant wheat seed that they see listed in the Svalbard database, they can't actually get it from the vault?
Correct. They cannot request it from Svalbard. They have to request it from the original gene bank that deposited it. No one has access to anyone else's seeds. Norway does not claim any ownership over the deposits. And sending a seed to Svalbard does not constitute a legal transfer of genetic resources.
That's a crucial distinction.
It is. If a nation shut down its own gene bank to rely solely on Svalbard, they would entirely lose their ability to distribute, study, or utilize their own seeds, because Svalbard has absolutely no mechanism or mandate to act as a distribution hub.
Ah, so the restriction is the feature, not a bug.
Exactly.
That black box strictness is the ultimate trust-building exercise, because in a world fraught with geopolitical tension, the only way you get rival nations to send their national heritage to a foreign country is by guaranteeing, both legally and physically, that those genetic resources can never be transferred, accessed, or stolen by anyone else.
It ensures the vault remains a true backup drive, not a public library.
Right. And this legal separation is what makes the international cooperation possible at all. But having this elegant theory and these airtight legal agreements, it's only really reassuring until the system is actually subjected to a real-world crisis.
And unfortunately, that test came sooner than anyone would have liked.
Yeah, which moves us beyond the theory of a doomsday vault to a very real, very dramatic test case.
Yeah.
Because the system was forced into action by the devastating reality of the Syrian civil war.
It was. The situation with the International Center for Agricultural Research in the Dry Areas, or ICARTA, it's the definitive proof of concept for the Svalbard Vault.
Here's where it gets really interesting. So ICARTA, they operated this major gene bank located in Tel Hadia, Syria.
Right, and their specific focus was on seeds from the Fertile Crescent.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it represents some of the oldest agricultural varieties in human history. These are crops that have naturally adapted over millennia to survive in extremely arid environments.
But as the war escalated, the researchers at ICARTA had to make this agonizing decision to just abandon their facility in Tel Hadia. They lost the ability to maintain their gene bank, and they could no longer safely distribute samples to the researchers and farmers who relied on them.
Their primary drive had essentially crashed.
Exactly. But thankfully, before the conflict reached that point, ICARTA had meticulously prepared and deposited backup samples into the Svalbard Global Seed Vault,
which initiated an unprecedented logistical operation. In 2015, and then again in 2017, ICARTA formally requested their black boxes back.
And those were the first withdrawals ever, right?
Yes. These represent the first and currently the only withdrawals in the entire history of the vault. The requested seeds were shipped from the Arctic down to ICARTA's newly established research facilities in Lebanon and Morocco.
And they didn't just put them in a new freezer once they got there. The ICARTA scientists took those dormant, dehydrated seeds, they planted them in fields, and they carefully grew them out. They brought them back to life.
They literally seeded their own recovery.
Yeah. They multiplied the seeds, distributed them to researchers who desperately needed those drought-resistant traits, fully stocked their new gene banks in Lebanon and Morocco, and then in just a perfect completion of the cycle, they dehydrated and packaged a brand new batch of backup seeds and sent them right back to the frozen mountain in Svalbard.
It is just a remarkable testament to the resilience of both the biological material and the human institutions safeguarding it.
It really is.
The withdrawal proved that the meticulous cataloging, the tripartite legal frameworks, the deep freeze engineering, it all performed flawlessly under immense pressure.
It actually worked when it mattered.
Yes, it validates the foundational mission of the facility, and it reminds us that catastrophic loss doesn't require a global extinction event. For the agricultural heritage of the Fertile Crescent, doomsday had arrived in the form of regional conflict, and the vault was there to catch them.
It really reframes the whole concept of preservation. Because the vault isn't a static museum or a tomb, you know? It's a living, breathing mechanism for recovery. And knowing that this system can successfully resurrect a region's crops after a war naturally raises the question of scale. Like, who else is utilizing this safety net today?
The scale of participation is staggering, and it is continually growing. As of early 2025, the Seed Vault conserves over 1.37 million individual accessions.
Over a million.
Yeah. And just for clarity, an accession is a distinct, unique variety of plant material, often referred to as germplasm, that's collected from a specific location and time.
Okay.
And those 1.37 million deposits come from 127 different depositors worldwide.
1.37 million distinct samples. And when you look at the manifest of depositors, it is this fascinating cross-section of global agriculture.
It really is.
You have the heavy hitters, right? The massive international and national gene banks. Like the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center has deposited over 180,000 samples.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. National Plant Germplasm System has sent over 150,000. Nations from Germany to South Korea are heavily invested. But the system is remarkably egalitarian. It isn't just restricted to massive industrial agriculture centers. Indigenous communities are also leveraging the vault to safeguard their ancestral crops.
And this is one of the most vital developments in the vault's history.
Yeah.
In 2015, representatives from the Parque de la Papa, the potato park in Peru, deposited 750 unique, locally adapted samples of Andean potatoes.
That's amazing.
It is. And in 2020, the Cherokee Nation became the first U.S. tribe to make a deposit, safeguarding 9 distinct samples of heirloom food crops. This includes sacred varieties of corn and beans that entirely predate European colonization.
It is a profound democratization of preservation. I mean, you have this ultimate time capsule where on the exact same metal shelving rack, sitting side by side in the same minus 18-degree air, you have massive industrial wheat experiments and ancient heirloom seeds that have been safeguarded by indigenous tribes for centuries.
And that diversity is scientifically critical. Protecting these unique, highly localized genetic traits is arguably more urgent than protecting mass-produced commercial wheat.
Why is that?
Because those traditional crops have survived millennia of localized environmental stress. They contain epigenetic memories and genetic traits that provide natural disease resistance and climate adaptability.
Ah, I see.
So as our global climate shifts and industrial monocultures become increasingly vulnerable to, say, new pathogens or extreme weather, the genetic keys locked inside those Cherokee heirloom seeds or those Andean potatoes might offer exactly the resilience our future food systems will require.
Right. But relying on ancient Cherokee seeds or Andean potatoes to save our future food supply kind of assumes the vault itself will survive our changing climate.
Which is a big assumption.
Yeah, because even a mountain fortress built to outlast human civilization eventually has to reckon with a rapidly warming planet. And in October 2016, the vault's own invincibility was seriously tested.
It was a significant stress test. And honestly, a sobering moment for the facility's administrators.
So, Svalbard experienced extraordinarily high temperatures and unprecedented heavy rainfall that October.
Mm-hmm.
The vault was originally engineered to handle minor water intrusion at the entrance during the standard spring thaw. But this was on an entirely different scale. The sheer volume of rain, combined with unusually rapid melting of the localized permafrost, caused water to breach and surge 15 meters into the 100-meter entrance tunnel.
The media coverage at the time painted a rather dire picture.
Oh, they loved it. The Doomsday Vault is flooding.
Exactly. But the actual structural design functioned exactly as intended under pressure.
Really? Even with that much water?
Yes. because the entrance tunnel deliberately slopes downward. So when the encroaching water surged those 15 meters in, it hit the ambient -3-degree permafrost zone of the deeper tunnel and literally froze into a glacier long before it could ever reach the physical storage rooms where the seeds are actually kept.
Oh, wow. So the seeds were never in danger.
The biological material was never at risk.
Okay, the fail-safe worked. But, I mean, 15 meters of water flooding into the entrance tunnel of the world's most important vault is still a massive wake-up call? Isn't it wildly ironic that a facility built to protect us from environmental catastrophe was almost breached by the very climate change it's hedging against?
That's the ultimate irony, yes.
And it forced the Norwegian Public Works Agency to undertake immediate and extensive upgrades. By 2019, they had completed a major overhaul. They waterproofed the tunnel walls entirely, they removed any internal heat sources that might disrupt the permafrost, and they dug these deep exterior drainage ditches into the mountain to divert future extreme rainfall.
The engineering upgrades were swift, and they were effective. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the 2016 breach serves as a stark warning.
How so?
We can build the strongest, most resilient shield imaginable.
Oh.
But ultimately, the vault is still inextricably linked to the overarching health of the planet. If the global environment degrades drastically enough, even Arctic permafrost can melt.
Right.
It is a potent reminder that exit to conservation, blocking biological material away in a vault, is only a temporary insurance policy. We still have to protect the primary biosphere.
We can't just hide all our problems in a mountain.
Exactly.
But despite that vulnerability, or maybe because of it, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault has transcended its role as just a mere biological storage unit and has become this massive cultural touchstone. I mean, anyone who has seen pictures of the facility knows it doesn't look like a brutalist, boring concrete bunker.
No, it's quite striking.
It's beautiful. Running down the roof and the front face of the entryway is this stunning illuminated artwork called Perpetual Repercussion by the Norwegian artist Divekesen. Because Norwegian law actually dictates that any government-funded construction project over a certain cost must include public art.
Which is a wonderful policy.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the vault's roof is filled with highly reflective stainless steel mirrors and prisms. During the summer months, it reflects the endless polar light. And in the dark winter, 200 fiber optic cables make the entrance glow with this muted greenish turquoise and white light. It physically acts as a beacon in the Arctic night.
And that aesthetic presence perfectly mirrors its cultural weight. Science communicators, like Carrie Fowler, really helped pull the project from relative obscurity into global awareness.
For sure.
It has captured the public imagination in the same way the International Space Station has. It stands as a profound monument to what humanity can actually achieve through peaceful international collaboration.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
It has inspired feature documentaries, literature, even a children's opera designed to raise ecological awareness. Its influence directly led to the creation of an adjacent facility to the Arctic World Archive.
Oh, right.
Which applies the exact same preservation concept to digital data and human culture. They are literally etching open source code and historical documents onto specialized film designed to last a millennium.
It's humanity looking at itself in the mirror and deciding that our collective story is worth saving.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? When you look at everything we've explored today, from the deep thermal engineering required to maintain suspended animation, to the airtight legal frameworks of the black box system, to the harrowing real-world recovery of the Icarta seeds, the Svalbard Global Sea Vault is so much more than a bunker waiting for the end of the world.
It's an active, functioning safety net.
Yes. It proves that despite all our geopolitical chaos and our institutional flaws, there is still a shared global belief in protecting the foundations of our survival.
It is a testament to human foresight. We collectively recognized our vulnerabilities, we acknowledged the fragility of the biological systems that keep us alive, and we actually cooperated to build a tangible safeguard.
And it leaves you with the lingering, maybe slightly unsettling thought. We've spent an incredible amount of time, international capital, and brilliant engineering to build a glowing frozen fortress at the top of the world just to back up our agricultural code. We recognize the irreplaceable value of a tiny, wrinkly seed. But as you look around at the complexities of modern life, it makes you wonder if we have to go to such extreme subterranean lengths to protect our food supply from our own instability, what other fundamental building blocks of human civilization might be quietly disappearing right now? What else is incredibly fragile, just waiting for someone to build a vault before it's too late?